Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to Blumber Podcast again, a conversation series where we explore the journeys and decisions of individuals shaping the future of healthcare systems. Today, we are honored to have with us Dr. Vijayakumar Gawali, a clinician, clinical researcher, and one of the key contributors to building and governing India's clinical research ecosystem. From establishing dedicated research departments in leading hospitals to auditing and standardizing clinical trial processes across the country and mentoring the next generation of researchers. His work spans across clinical practice, system design, ethics, and education. Now, with over 2 decades of experience and involvement in hundreds of global clinical trials, Dr. Gawali brings a unique perspective on how medical research can be both innovative and ethically grounded. We are really excited to have you here, Doctor, and welcome on board. We would love to hear about your journey and your way ahead. So let's start from the beginning. You chose medicine with a very specific goal, right? What was it, and how did it contribute to your choices?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Pushpa, for having me over here on this wonderful platform. You're doing a great work of getting the input from the experts
Yeah,
and then sharing it with the world wherever it is relevant. Thus, congratulations to you for your this initiative.
thank you. And
And
yeah,
definitely, again, it's a pleasure to be here with you. If I reflect on where it all began, I will say that it was not driven by ambition.
mhm.
It was driven by exposure.
Exposure.
So, see, I come from a very remote part of Maharashtra, a very small village where access to healthcare is extremely limited.
Mm,
And growing up, I saw a very clear gap, not in the disease, I will say, but in access to healthcare.
mm,
So, even today, if you look at India,
mm.
we have a doctor patient ratio that is still evolving,
True, true.
not sufficient yet.
Yes.
And especially in rural areas is the problem. But back then, it was even more, I will say, pronounced.
Mm, mm.
So initially, my decision to pursue medicine was simple. I wanted to fill that gap, which I saw that.
Mm,
But during my medical training,
mm.
that thinking started evolving slowly, steadily. And I remember a personal incident
Okay.
where one of my close friend's mother fell seriously ill, in fact.
Oh,
And due to financial constraint, they could not access the timely private care. And when she was shifted to a government setup, there were delays even before treatment could even begin.
okay.
So that experience made me realize something very important.
Mm,
So the healthcare challenges are
mhm,
not just, I will say, clinical, but they are systemic. There's an issue at that level itself.
mm.
So if you look globally also, nearly, I think 50% healthcare outcomes are influenced by the system level factors.
Mm, mm,
So when I say system level factors, it is the, I just said the access to healthcare,
mm,
the affordability,
mm,
the quality.
mm,
So these are the factors at the system level.
mm.
So at that stage, I started thinking a little beyond. So I shifted my focus from there rather than thinking, how do I treat my patients to how do I improve the system that treats patients?
Okay, okay.
So that was the first shift in my thinking, I would say. And that's how I started pursuing my medicine.
Wow. So that's an
Yeah.
interesting thought, right? How do you shift systems which treat patients?
Yeah.
Like that's a broader perspective of just thinking about how do I treat patients. So I remember you told me that you were working with one doctor, Dr. Bhatt, was a Parkinson's specialist,
Yes.
and that also triggered your journey towards clinical research. Can you please elaborate on that, Doctor?
Yeah. Yeah. So initially, during my MBBS itself, that was around 2000,
Okay.
I developed a deep interest in pharmacology.
Hmm.
And as you stated the name of Dr. Mohit Bhatt, my mentor, who is now director of neurosciences at Kokilaben Dhirubhai Ambani Hospital,
Okay.
very famous hospital run by Reliance Industries, Anil Dhirubhai Ambani ji,
Hmm.
and he's a director there at Andheri, Mumbai.
Wow. Okay.
So his wife worked in pharmacology department, and the madam then probably meet Dr. Mohit Bhatt sir, where I met him.
Mm-hmm.
But in back then in 2000 only, when I was in my second year, we have a subject called pharmacology.
Mm.
So in that subject pharmacology, I really developed a deep interest. But what shaped my thinking further were the conversations with seniors like Dr. Mohit Bhatt sir, which you just mentioned now,
Mm.
and the early exposure to how the drug regulation
Mm.
worked in India at that time.
Mm. Mm.
So there were a lot of concerns at that time. If you see the regulatory frameworks were not fully aligned with the global standards. There were like the issues.
Mm. Mm.
So clinical trial conduct lacked that kind of consistency. The oversight mechanisms were, we'll say, still evolving kind of.
Mm. Mm.
So now, if you compare something like that with today,
Mm.
India has made tremendous growth. I would say in terms of, I don't know if you have heard this.
Mm-hmm.
There's something called as a NDCT guideline, New Drug Clinical Trial Guideline, which the Modi government has come up with,
Okay.
where it has ethics committee strengthening mechanism, the digital approval. But at that time it was a different scenario,
Mm.
and that made me reflect on a very critical point.
Mm.
If the process of drug development is weak, then the patient safety is compromised even at a larger scale.
True. Mm.
So the drug development process, once it is weak, the patient safety is really compromised at a large scale. And if you see globally, the statistics says that it takes 10 to 12 years, and nearly, I will say, $1 to $2 billion
Oh,
to bring single drug to the market.
wow.
So if any part of the entire process
Mm-hmm.
lacks any level of rigor,
Mm-hmm.
the downstream effect is massive.
Got
So
it.
I think that realization made me very curious about maybe the clinical research, the drug development processes. And from the second year MBBS itself, I started a little going beyond textbook, trying to understand how clinical trials are designed, how drugs are validated, and how the global regulatory systems function. And gradually, my interest shifted from just using the medicines to understanding or treating the patients
Mm-hmm.
to how they are created and validated. So slowly, steadily, I will say the interest developed. In clinical research, when you are working on therapies that world will adopt 5 to 10 years down the line,
Mm-hmm.
the perspectives are very powerful there.
Mm-hmm.
So globally, 80 to 90% clinical decisions today are evidence based.
Okay.
That evidences comes from at the end clinical trials only.
Okay.
So I realize as a clinician, I can impact individual patient. As a clinician, I can treat my patient, and I can impact an individual patient.
True.
But as a researcher, I can influence the future standard of the care which can be offered globally. And I also saw the level of the structure, the protocol driven care, the ethical oversight, the detailed documentation, the scientific rigor which is required is very different from routine clinical practice. And at that moment, I felt that that's where I can probably contribute meaningfully, and uh, maybe not just the patient in front of me, but for maybe the future patients,
Yeah.
the
Community at home.
future treatments, the evolution of medicine itself. So that's how the whole thing started.
So, what exactly does a clinical research constitute? Like, there is one medicine coming up, or is it about
Mhm.
a practice that is coming into picture? What exactly does clinical research constitute?
So what happens is that in the clinical research there are two things. Uh, the drug development process. The first thing is about doing the experiment on the animals, which I think you, me, and all general population is also aware
Hmm.
that before the drug goes to a human being, this has to be first tested in the animals. So that is a step one. So once we are confident about the step one, that yes, the drug is working well in the animals, so likely it may work in human being. That does not translate, that does not extrapolate that it will work in human being. However, we know at least a basic non-clinical data. Based on that step one, then we take a step two. Step two is doing the clinical trials in human beings. So now, when we say we are giving a medicine which is experimental in nature to a human being, so there is a huge risk somebody is taking.
Yes.
You just don't know whether your patient will survive or whether the patient will die.
Yeah.
because nobody in the world knows about that drug.
Hmm.
It is the first time a human being will able to know something about that drug. So doctor is clueless, the government is clueless, obviously the patient is definitely clueless.
Yeah.
So that is the situation of step two,
Hmm.
where we divide that step two in various phases. We don't take and thousands of patient. We start with a small cohort. We take 10, 20 patient, do experiment. This is all legal, ethical, only post government permissions only.
Okay.
Once we do that, 10 patient, 20, 100,000 in a phase-wise manner,
Hmm.
we go on collecting the data. And when we say data, we collect data of two kinds. One is about the good effects, or we'll say the efficacy of the drug.
Hmm.
And second is important is the side effect of the drug.
I understood.
So this data gets collected.
Okay.
So this entire process is called a clinical trial.
Okay. Okay. Understood. So once you get this kind of data, like based on the side effects, does further changes be made, or something is modulated into the medicine, and then again clinical trials happen, or what happens after that?
Yeah, I think what you rightly mentioned was that you rightly mentioned that when the trial is done,
Hmm.
what happens? Do we modify that drug if we are not happy about the effect? So
Hmm.
that's what happens.
Okay.
So this is like a trial and error.
Hmm.
So we do the one clinical trial. So these clinical trials are done by the pharma companies.
Okay.
We as a doctors, we only facilitate that.
Okay.
But to develop that drug, get government permissions is by the pharma companies. As you rightly mentioned,
Hmm.
once we have the data,
Hmm.
and if the drug is failed, that will be kept aside. If the results are encouraging, we'll go further. We'll try to study more about that drug. And this journey is 15 years, as I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Slowly, steadily it evolves. That's what the whole process is called a clinical trial.
Okay. I have a
Yeah.
question here, Doctor.
Yeah.
During COVID, India came up with COVID, right? And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I saw the movie too. It is the way our researchers came up with the medicine, tremendous, tremendous journey.
Yeah.
But it did not take, I mean, they did not have time, first of all, because they had to release the medicine out into the market very quickly. Like as for
Yes.
the movie, they showed anywhere between 1 year to 18 months was what COVID took for it.
Very true.
Yeah. So this, how do we explain? Because you said it takes 15 years for the medicine to mature and actually
Yes.
put it into the market. But when
Yeah. Yeah.
COVID was made, how did the researchers and the pharmacists and the and yourself, like I mean
Yes. Yes.
how did that happen?
Yeah. So very, you rightly brought out this very critical and important point
Hmm.
that when the vaccines or drug would take somewhere around 15 years,
Hmm.
how come in 1 to 2 years we got the vaccine?
Correct.
So at that time, there are certain procedures which were expedited. For
Okay.
example,
Hmm.
when a doctor goes or when a pharma company goes to the government for there to seek the permission
Hmm.
that please allow us to conduct the trial.
Hmm.
So that may take a year. There is a lot of review which happens.
Okay.
But here, that is cut down to 1 week.
Okay. Got it.
So at the government office, the time which will take let's say roughly around a year,
Hmm.
is cut down to only 1 week.
Okay.
Why? Emergency.
Emergency. Okay.
And all government officials were meeting together, discussing study approval.
Hmm.
Now, second part is the animal experiments or the human experiments. So all the phases were done in parallel.
Hmm. Okay.
So phase one, then phase two, then phase three. This is the routine method. We did not go for a routine method.
Hmm.
So things happen parallelly
Understood.
to save the time.
Hmm. Got it.
And I think people also volunteered because everybody knew that
Yes.
unless and until we find the cure, everybody's anyways going to die.
True. True. True.
So that's how the all processes. And I told you the example, the first step itself, which may take a year,
Hmm.
cut down to 1 week.
1 week.
So that explains how everything was expedited.
Hmm. It would have been a lot of coordination, lot of hard work for the researchers and clinicians like yourself, right? To put everything together, speed up things.
Yeah, vaccine, and in fact, at our hospital, which is Bhaktivedanta Hospital and a research institute, where I am a medical superintendent,
Mm-hmm.
um, we have a concept called integrated medicine. It is
Okay.
an evolving concept.
Mm-hmm.
Integrated means integrate,
Mm.
and what we integrate here, we integrated various pathies: homeopathy, allopathy, naturopathy, yoga. So all these sciences are practicing under one roof at our institute.
Okay.
We brought all of them together. We wanted them to explore whatever is offered in their pathies for such kind of disorders.
Oh.
And we, based on our experience, we have a full-fledged department here. We conducted clinical trials on the patients and submitted record to Ayush Ministry,
Mm-hmm.
which is the highest ministry for the medicines coming from the Ayurveda.
Mm.
So they told us to do the clinical trials in the government hospitals.
Okay.
So we went to the collector of Palghar, Maharashtra.
Uh-huh.
They kindly permitted us, considering the serious
Situation.
situations around,
Mm-hmm.
and they permitted us. And we did the trial on 436 patients in Maharashtra. We got a good result.
Mm.
We again submitted to Ayush Ministry. So this was a simple formulation which could bring down the symptoms, which could bring down the patient from the more grave situation to a normal situation.
Okay.
And then we tried that on thousands of patients. It helped, and then we didn't got the official government permission per se.
Mm.
It got a little delayed,
Mm.
but we got a very good response, and we served more than 2 crore people in that. So
Yeah.
apart from vaccines, something like that was also happening in the country.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So, after your MBBS, I'm going back to your Just
Okay.
Look hospital experience. So, how did I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
you telling that was a very important phase for you, which shaped you into the clinical researcher that you are. So, how was that transition, and
yeah,
what
yeah.
was the impact that happened, Doctor?
So as you rightly mentioned, after MBBS,
Mm-hmm.
um, I joined Jaslok Hospital, which is again in Mumbai.
Yeah.
So this transition, what you asked, was very transformative.
Okay.
So because if you see, until MBBS, our role as doctors is largely centered around using established treatments only.
Mm-hmm.
But at Jaslok Hospital, where I shifted,
Mm-hmm.
I was suddenly a part of a system where treatments were not just being used, they were being evaluated, validated, and built for the future.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that shift in perspective is very powerful, in fact.
Mm.
In clinical research, you are often working on molecules or therapies
Mm.
that may become standard of care 5 to years down the line,
Correct.
may impact thousands or even millions of patients globally.
Mm. Mm.
In fact, if you see globally, nearly 90% modern therapeutic guidelines
Mm.
are based on the evidence generated through clinical trials only.
Mm.
So I realized very early that clinical research is not just a profession, it is a responsibility towards the future medicine.
True, true. Hmm.
So I remember observing how protocols were followed with precision. Every patient interaction was documented. Every minor adverse events were treated seriously.
Okay.
And I think it was a level of that discipline
Hmm.
that was very different from my routine clinical practice.
Got it.
And that exposure made me think this is where medicine becomes science driven. I will say the system driven,
Hmm.
and I will say globally very, very relevant. That's how the transition was at this local hospital.
So that were your early observations at Just Look, where you figured that documentation and how today's clinical trials are going to define what the future would look like and how it could expand to the public at large. At that stage, also, when you were in Just Look, or even beyond that, did you find the gaps in the system which you felt could be filled and needs to be addressed?
Yeah, yeah. I think regarding the gaps there, your question is, I think, very, very pertinent.
Okay.
Yes, that's where the reality becomes more deeper,
Mm-hmm.
because to truly understand clinical trials today, we must acknowledge where the field has come from.
Hmm.
So I'll briefly tell you
Mm-hmm.
how we have evolved.
Okay.
So if you see, there was a time in the history
Mm-hmm.
where clinical research existed without ethics, without taking permission from the patient,
Yeah.
without accountability from anybody.
Okay.
That's how the clinical trials started. And I will tell you example of if you have read about the period of Nazi Germany in the World War between 1942
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
1945, this is a decade.
Yeah.
In that era,
Mm-hmm.
the medical experiments were conducted on prisoners by the Nazi government
Oh, wow. Okay.
in the concentration camp. Men, women, even children
Mm.
of different nationalities, which they captured.
Mm.
So if you see the news reports, 15,000 individuals were documented as victims of a clinical trial.
Oh.
While many died, and those who survived carried lifelong physical and psychological scars. That was such a grievous situation.
Mm-hmm.
In one such experiment, prisoners were placed in low pressure
Low pressure chambers. Okay.
chambers.
Hmm.
To what? To stimulate extreme altitude up to 15,000 meter.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
For what purpose? Just to study whether the pilots could survive at those heights.
Oh.
Because there is war going on.
Uh-huh.
They wanted to know whether their soldiers will survive at that height. And there was no knowledge about it. So what they did? Experiments on the prisoners.
Oh.
Then to keep them in the low pressure chambers to simulate that. So they were artificially creating that kind of altitude of 15,000 meters
Mm-hmm.
on the ground
Uh-huh.
and keeping the patient inside, keeping the prisoners inside.
Christmas inside. Okay.
So can you imagine something, a human being placed inside a chamber and observed as oxygen levels stopped, consciousness faded, life is slipping away, and that was not for the treatment, not for the cure,
Mm.
just for the data.
Mm.
And that is one of the most, I think, painful reminders
Mm.
in the entire medical history. And I think what happens when science advances without ethics is something a lesson. And these events shook the entire world.
Mm.
They became the foundation. Everything we now consider non-negotiable in the clinical research, like informed consent, ethics committee oversight,
Mm-hmm.
the patient safety as the highest priority.
Yeah.
So now, when I bring that global history
Mm-hmm.
into the Indian context, especially around 2004, where I was working with the Slok Hospital, and you asked me a question
Yeah.
that when I was at the Slok, what differences I saw. So this is the background
Okay.
where we were not facing those extremes when I started my career there. But we're still in a phase of evolution. Like clinical trials were being conducted, but systems were not fully mature.
Mm. Mm.
At many sites, the trials were managed alongside routine clinical responsibilities. That is difficult.
Okay.
The dedicated research teams were limited. Documentation practices were inconsistent. And most importantly, the structured training pathways were largely absent. So people learned, I think, only way they could by observing, by adopting, I will say, or often through a trial and error, I will say. But that introduces a lot of risk. Because in clinical research, even small inconsistencies can impact the patient safety, the data credibility, and even the regulatory trust.
Mm.
The second layer, the question which you asked me about what I observed,
Mm.
I will say that the second layer was the regulatory enforcement.
Okay. Okay.
The frameworks existed even at that time, but the implementation, the monitoring, the audit cultures were not as strong as standardized as we see today. And there was a lot of limited real-time oversight, or the accountability mechanisms were still evolving.
Mm.
And beyond systems, I will say there was an ecosystem gap. Like hospitals had not fully integrated the research as a strategic function.
Mm.
The administrative understanding of trials was very, very limited. And the patients, if you see the patients and general populace also, they had very low awareness about it.
Yes.
So if I describe that phase, I will say it was, I will say, system in a transition.
Uh-huh.
The scientific potential was high, the opportunities were growing, but the structure, the standardization, and the ethical integrations were still developing. And that's where I think history is so important for our policy, because the lessons from the global tragedies and the example which we discussed today
Yes.
and the gaps we observed locally lead to one very clear principle. Clinical research must never move faster than ethics.
True.
For me, that realization was, I think, defining, and it made very clear that the future of clinical research is not just about innovation, It is about ensuring that every advancement in science remains grounded in dignity, safety, and humanity, I will say.
Wow. Amazing. Dignity, safety, and humanitarian grounds. Very, very important. You joined Kokilaben Hospital and you established the clinical research department over there. So, why did you think? Why did Kokilaben think that a clinical research department is important to have it in house? And how did you go about establishing that department there, doctor?
So I remember when I joined Kokilaben around, it was around 2009.
Okay.
If you see the India's clinical research ecosystem was at very, I would say, very critical stage.
Mm-hmm.
Because on one hand, there was a growing global interest in India.
Okay.
So all the global companies, everybody wanted to come to India.
Mm-hmm.
Simple reasons: large patient population, cost efficiency,
Mm-hmm.
strong clinical expertise.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, on the other hand, there's a lot of lack of regulatory clarity and standardization.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I mentioned earlier, also, we were still operating largely under a Drug and Cosmetic Act 1940.
Okay. Okay.
So, try and imagine
Mm-hmm.
we are in 2026 today.
Mm.
And at that time, when I was, your question was when I joined Kokilaban Hospital, which was 2009.
Uh-huh.
So, maybe more than 60 years of independence.
Correct.
But what law we are following?
Nine.
1940,
Yeah.
pre-independence era.
Pre-independence.
So imagine from pre-independence era to today's date,
Mm-hmm.
60, 70 years,
Mm-hmm.
so many changes happened globally.
Right.
But how are we doing trials based on 1940 Act?
Ah.
I think which was not designed for the modern and global multicentral trial. But now if you compare that with the global systems like US has well-defined FDA pathways,
Mm.
and if you see the Europe had EMA frameworks, there's something called as a ICH GCP guidelines
Mm-hmm.
are very, very strictly implemented. So there is very clear gap between the global expectations versus Indian
Indian.
regulatory clarity.
Okay.
And this gap had real consequences, I will say.
Mm.
In fact, around that period, the India's participation in global clinical trials was slowly, steadily increasing. But the concerns around the ethical compliance, the data credibility, they were raised internationally. So the
Right.
challenge was, how do you build a globally compliant system in a locally evolving regulatory environment?
Mm. Mm.
So I had attended I remember the investigators meeting and workshops in more than 18 countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Austria, Switzerland, Italy, UAE. I traveled a lot.
Mm.
And what stood out globally was standardization and discipline.
Okay. Okay.
So, for example, the clear role definitions, the strong documentation culture,
Mm.
I will say the zero tolerance for the protocol deviations, and we need to have the audit readiness also.
Mm.
So globally, even today, the 60% regulatory findings in audits are related to documentations and protocol deviations.
Okay. Okay.
So the systems are designed to minimize all that.
Mm.
So when I came back to India,
Mm.
I realized the intent was there.
Mm.
The systems were not fully mature.
Mm.
And so instead of waiting for external clarity, we started at Kokilaban Hospital building our own internal clarity.
Mm. Mm.
So we focused on building institutional level frameworks
Mm-hmm.
aligned with the global expectations.
Mm.
And the
Mm.
first step was standardization through standard operating procedures.
Okay.
So we developed detailed standard operating procedures for clinical trial conduct, the ethics committee functioning, and SOP driven systems. Like they developed the kind of a backbone of
Mm-hmm.
our consistency. That's how we started at
Kokilaben.
Kokilaban Hospital.
So, doctor, when you say you travel to 18 different countries to study their clinical trial practices and how you identified documentation and protocol, following the protocol was the key to the success. So, did that impact your execution of setting up this clinical research department? Was that the reason also for you to travel?
Uh, the reason for the travel was to learn,
Okay.
and since I was a co-investigator in the clinical trials which we were conducting at Cook Hospital
Mm-hmm.
and my previous organization, Silk Hospital.
Okay.
So it is mandatory. If you see, the clinical trials are generally international in nature.
Okay.
So companies will not do a trial in one particular country. That doesn't happen
Mm-hmm.
because the laws of every countries are different.
True. True.
And if I am a person manufacturing the drug in America,
Hmm.
so I can only sell in America. If I have to sell in India, then I have to come back to India, do the trials on Indian population,
Okay. Okay.
prove that Indian government that yes, my drug works in America,
Mm-hmm.
it as well works in India,
Yeah.
and then I will be permitted.
Understood.
So I just wanted to learn what are the various ways they do it and how are they better.
Hmm.
That was the reason I traveled various countries where I presented.
Hmm.
Mostly, I did not contributed much,
Hmm.
but I think I was only educated by the international mentors,
Standard.
seniors, and communities at that time.
Hmm.
And my goal was to bring that knowledge to India
Hmm.
and contribute to my local land. That's
Understood.
how then I contributed at Kokilagan Hospital.
Wow. So, what were your biggest challenges when you had to set this up? I think, I mean, you have studied enough and you have traveled enough and you have done the research. You knew what to do. But in India, in Kokilaben, there must be, I mean, hierarchies or people or departments where you had to let them know that this is what is important, or this kind of
Yeah,
tools are
yeah.
required, infrastructure. So, what kind of challenges did you face while building this?
So when we say establishing clinical research or doing research activities, the critical role is played by doctors, and second role is by the hospital administrators or the management system.
Mm-hmm.
So I had faced issues at both the levels.
Okay, okay.
So so clinical research is not just the science, but I think it's a coordination. And fortunately,
Mm-hmm.
the only fortunate part there was I had the flexibility to build my own research team
Okay.
and train them as per the I think the
Standard.
SOPs which I believed in.
Okay.
So I strongly believe that in clinical research, training is not an option;
Mm.
it is a foundation.
Okay, okay.
So I personally trained the doctors and the researchers on there's something called as good clinical practice principles, the protocol adherence, the ethical conduct, the documentation standards. So that's I started training that.
Mm.
So when we come back to clinicians,
Mm.
being a doctor myself,
Mm-hmm.
helped me significantly understand what are their concerns because I understood their realities. In
True.
India, high patient load, time constraints,
Yeah.
clinical priorities, these are our problems.
Mm.
So in India, doctors often see far more patients per day
Mm.
compared to Western, I will say, the systems,
Yes.
which makes it unrealistic to expect them to manage the detailed research documentation.
Mm.
So my role became that of a bridge, translating the clinical intent
Mm.
into research protocol.
Mm.
So translating the regulatory requirement into practical workflows.
Mm.
So I think this alignment was very critical for sure. And the globally, one of the biggest reasons for trial failure is a lack of coordination between stakeholders, and we wanted to avoid that.
Okay.
So these were certain obstacles I faced, and
Mm.
systematically, whatever I learned through that, I overcome those.
Understood. So you said it is important to put all the stakeholders in align with all the stakeholders and ensure that they know what is happening. So, so when you were in institutions, right, who are doing clinical
Yeah.
research, what are the most common mistakes they do when trying to build research capabilities?
Yeah, I think that's an important question. What are the consistent mistakes they do? So, um, there I will say some consistent mistakes which I have observed, and I have seen those, I will say, across multiple institutions, even beyond that phase.
Hmm.
The first is understanding the need of trained professionals.
Hmm.
Now, if you see the clinical research is a very specialized domain.
Hmm.
So, yet many institutes assume any clinicians,
Hmm.
any staff can manage trial clinical research.
Hmm.
But globally,
Hmm.
lack of training is one of the leading causes of protocol deviations, data inconsistencies, and audit findings.
True, true.
This is the first mistake that they think anybody can do a clinical research. The second mistake institute do is the lack of leadership vision. So if senior management does not understand I will say the strategic value of the research, the infrastructure requirement, the long-term returns which you may get, then clinical research just remains very I will say underdeveloped. So
Understood.
globally, if you see the top pharma, if we just analyze all the top performing the research centers, the clinical trials are considered as a strategic pillar, not just an optional activity.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and the third major gap, I would say that absence of robust standard operating procedures and the governance structures. Because without SOPs, the processes become inconsistent, compliance becomes, I would say, reactive instead of a proactive, and the audit readiness is compromised.
Okay.
And this extends to ethics committees as well. So we say there's something called ethics committee, which is an independent body in the hospital setting, which is expected to approve the research and then the research to be done on the patients.
Okay, okay.
So this is the only committee, obviously it is approved by the government of India, that stays within the campus of the hospital, and they have the huge responsibility. In fact, the government has empowered them equally as a government employees only.
Oh, okay. And
So
this,
they have the authority.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So this ethics committee will be prevalent in every hospital, doctor?
Yes.
Okay.
So no clinical trial is permitted unless the hospital has this
Ethics
technical committee called a ethics committee.
Okay.
So there are various members in this ethics committee. So we have people from different walks of life. Majorly 5 people are required. Since you asked about the ethics committee,
Yeah.
number 1 clinician, number 2 medical scientist, number 3 layperson, number 4 social worker, and number 5 the legal person.
Got it.
So these are the 5 people who are required to form the committee. You need to register that with the Delhi SADSCO office, Central Drug Standard Control Organization at Delhi.
Okay.
They will permit you, and then only these members can approve a clinical trial.
Understood.
The problem is when we have untrained ethics committee, then obviously they will delay the approvals or they may miss the critical risk assessment. Their job is to critically analyze the risk involved,
For any.
because there is nobody. See, the government is busy, pharma company is biased because they want their drug to approve, they want to earn a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And who is at a risk? Patient.
Yeah.
And who can protect patient? Not sponsor, because they have bias. They have conflict of interest. Can doctor protect? No.
No.
Doctor also has a conflict of interest. He also want to earn money. He also want the science to advance even at the cost of a human being.
Yeah.
That's how we are humans. Committee has very critical role, and if you see the untrained ethics committee can really mess up the situations. And I've seen many institutions lack expertise in the negotiating in the clinical trial agreement.
Okay.
These are the agreement between the hospital and the pharma companies. And what happens is that the hospital people हम बोलते हैं बहुत भोले होते हैं. Sometimes they don't understand. I'm not against pharma companies because I also represent pharma companies. But generally, the trials need to be properly negotiated.
Correct.
There should be proper compensation given to the hospitals by the pharma companies.
Okay.
There should be proper compensation to the patient to be given. So, but all that has to be negotiated by the hospital. So this is one more problem. So that what happens if you don't consider the financial aspect, then there is a financial risk, then there's a legal risk, then there's ethical risk, and globally this is taken seriously.
Wow.
In India, if you see, clinicians often manage very high patient volumes. So if institutions are going to assume that doctor alone can treat patients, conduct trials, or maintain documentation, it is going to lead to non-compliance.
Yeah.
And historically, if you see, this is one of the reasons why some trials in India face scrutiny, some sites were restricted from conducting trials. So on this platform, I don't want to name any hospitals, but if you go and the public can see on the net how the hospitals were banned to conduct clinical trials by the government of India.
Okay.
So we learned that the clinical research needs dedicated systems, not add-on effort. But so from early on, I believe that we must build ethical structured, which are globally credible research systems, regardless of whatever there's external limitations which we have, but we need to have all these things.
Amazing. That's interesting that there is a lot of science behind setting up a clinical research department. So, so you had joined Bhaktivedanta Hospital, right? And as a person, again, as the head of the clinical research department itself. Now, when you joined, the team was of three. Now it has scaled to 30. What were your key decisions that enabled you to this growth?
At Kuklaban Hospital, I already had experience of developing a research unit.
Yeah.
So at this phase, I will say was translating systems into scale or maybe sustainability. So when I joined the Bhaktivedanta Hospital,
Mm,
we were just three people
mm,
in the department,
mm,
and today we are 30 people.
mm, mm,
So 10 times more.
mm.
So this growth was, I will say, not just about increasing numbers, but it was about building a self-sustaining research ecosystem. The first key decision was aligning the leadership vision, I will say. That was our first decision.
Okay.
Because if you see globally, if you look at high performing research institutes like Mayo Clinic and those examples, if you take, whether in the US, Europe, or even in countries like South Korea,
Mm,
where the clinical research is treated as a very strategic function,
mm.
not an optional activity like a lot of Indian institutes do.
Yeah.
So I spent significant time in aligning the hospital management, clinicians to understand that the clinical research contributes to
Mm,
the, I will say, scientific credibility, the patient access to innovate the therapies, the global collaborations, and the long-term institutional growth.
understood. Mm,
So once that is established, the next step is building systems that can scale.
mm, mm.
So one of the most important initiative we started was developing something called as biomedical and health research unit.
Okay.
So when we say biomedical health research unit is like a centralized model that provides end-to-end research support to all doctors.
Okay. Okay.
So globally, if you see, one of the biggest challenge in the doctor-led research is lack of support system, the administrative burden on the doctors, and fragmentation of processes.
Mm, mm,
So even today, studies show that a significant proportion of investigator initiated,
mm,
that is a technical word for studies which are initiated by the doctors,
mm.
they fail due to logistical and operational challenges, not the scientific limitations.
Got it.
So we designed this specialized unit called the Biomedical Health Research Unit
Mm-hmm.
to address exactly this problem.
Mm, mm.
So from the protocol design to regulatory approvals to the data analysis to the publications, all those activities were supported through this specialized unit.
Okay.
So this relieved clinicians from the administrative burden and allowed them to focus on science and patient care because everything else administrative aspect were taken by this particular unit.
Mm, mm.
So we realized that the availability of well-trained clinical research professionals was a bottleneck.
Mm.
I found it very difficult in India to get very well-trained clinical research professionals.
Okay.
So then we were thinking, how do we address this problem? From where we will get clinical research professional?
Mm.
And I think this is not an India-specific issue. Globally, also workforce readiness is a challenge. And but in India,
Mm.
the gap is more pronounced due to lack of standardized training ecosystems.
Mm.
So we observed because of this, what happened was there was a slow patient involvement, the errors in documentation, the inconsistencies in the trial. So we thought instead of depending entirely on hiring the outside people,
That's
we
true.
made a strategic decision that we will build our own talent pipeline. That's where we started in-house clinical research training program. It is a 15 months in-house training program called post-graduation in clinical research.
Okay.
And this is one of the path breakers in the clinical trial industry to have such a program in-house, that too in the campus for 15 months. So this was designed in a very proactive driven and I will say the industry aligned programs, and We expanded the eligibility across the medical graduates, which include MBBS, BMS, BHMS, BDS, all those. The allied health professionals, the pharmacy graduates, the life science graduates. So, and we built a comprehensive curriculum, so which covered the clinical research fundamentals, the pharmacology, and the drug development. So the most important aspect was again the hands-on exposure. So we may train all this theoretically, but again the problem remains the same. How do we get trained clinical research professionals? The participants who are taking admission here, they worked on real clinical trials. That's how this 15 months training started. A real clinical trial, a real documentation, a real patient interaction. Because globally, one of the biggest gap in training program is theory without application. Very theory, no application. And that's where error originates. And it has multiple benefits. Like if we do this proper systematic training to the people, then we will have improved trial quality, the faster patient recruitment, the lower attrition rates, and I will say the long-term sustainability as well. So, in fact, this model also contributed to the financial sustainability because the trained teams could support. So, more research projects, more medical writing, the collaborative studies, and we focus heavily on the data and infrastructure. So, for example, we created the investigators and research databases to identify various opportunities. We build the patient database, the pre-screening logs. So if you see globally, nearly 80% clinical trials, they face delays. And one of the biggest reason is patient recruitment. So by building the structured recruitment systems, we were able to reduce delays, improve efficiency. We also ensured that there is a dedicated research infrastructure, secure data storage, the digital tools for collaboration and documentation. So, so beyond building a successful model within our institution, our larger vision was to see many people or many more such high quality clinical trial sites should develop across India. So my goal has always been to contribute at a national level. So we didn't wanted to restrict that knowledge only for our Bhaktivedanta hospital. And therefore, we consciously chose not to keep these systems in the Bhaktivedanta premises or our operational insight, which we have probably learned through decades and decades. So we don't wanted to limit it ourselves. And we decided that, in fact, along with my colleague, Miss Ria Vijay, who is also very expert in developing such research units, both of us came together. We documented our entire experience, whatever we gone, in a peer-reviewed international publication. Now, this is titled as Establishing Biomedical and Health Research Unit in the Hospital Setting, Overcoming Barriers to the Translational Research in India. And if you see, this particular paper is co-authored by Ms. Ria and me. This work is particularly designed as a practical, step-by-step guide that the hospitals can adopt and replicate. From the setting up the systems from scratch to building a fully functional, advanced clinical research ecosystem so that the impact extends far beyond a single institution. That was our vision. We didn't limit our knowledge to ourselves. Now this is already published in the international journal and people can avail the benefit of it.
Amazing. So when you wrote this book or this paper about all your experiences along with Dr. Ria, so what was the motive? It was to ensure that there are more clinical departments that come, clinical research departments that come up, or is it like you wanted to educate the general doctor fraternity about how the clinical research happens? What was the main motive behind writing this?
Yeah. So when a particular pharma company would like to do research in India, and if they see that in India, generally they would need, let's say, 50 to 100 hospitals to do their research and trial. So when we say experiment on human being, generally these clinical trials are designed in a very particular way where we have very stringent inclusion criteria. That meaning what kind of patient which can be included is very strict criteria. So now, if the outside world will know that there are only 5-10 hospitals which have that kind of ability, that kind of skill set, and that kind of human talent, They will never come to India
True.
because they want at least 50 to 100 hospitals like that.
Hmm.
The vision was not to limit the knowledge to our hospital, but expand similar kind of institution across the country
Hmm.
so that there is a confidence generated in the global community that India is not lagging behind.
Hmm.
India also has that kind of talent.
Hmm.
India also has that kind of infrastructure.
Hmm.
India also understand the proactiveness required to conduct clinical trials.
Hmm.
So all that, to achieve all that at the national level,
Hmm.
it was important that we publish our work and in fact assist the hospitals.
Hmm.
And we have many hospitals in the Mumbai city itself, where our team from Bhaktivedanta Hospital, including me, we went there from the scratch, from the civil work, even from the civil work to establishing the research systems. We educated people. That was the whole vision behind ensuring that we publish our work.
Nice, very nice, doctor. So, like you have been managing a whole team out there, and you have also
Yeah.
been conducting hundreds of trials, both nationally
Yes.
and internationally, right? How do you ensure consistency and quality in these trials or clinical, I mean, research basis?
Yeah. So I think you brought up a very important question. At this hospital, we completed more than 100 global clinical trials. That is like a huge work.
Yeah, yeah,
In my earlier organization, I supervised 500 international drug trials. So like huge, thousands of patients, thousands of interactions.
right,
So your question becomes very pertinent that when we say thousands of patients are getting exposed to a research drug,
correct,
enormous risk involved. And so your question about how
consistency.
do we mention the quality is, I think, very important.
Yeah.
So we have a three-layered quality system.
Okay,
The first layer is by the clinical research coordinators.
okay,
So clinical research coordinator is the designation given for the people who are from science and medical, paramedical, and pharma background,
okay,
who has a knowledge of conduct of clinical trials with
mm,
specialized training and the skills.
okay,
So that is our first layer.
okay,
The clinical research coordinators, they are responsible for the protocol adherence and the documentation.
mm,
The second layer, I will say, is quality assurance team. So what they do is they review, they see whether there is any deviation, they track that, they ensure that the compliance is there.
mm-hmm,
And the third layer is myself as a head of clinical trials,
mm-hmm,
ensuring the alignment with the regulatory and the ethical standards.
okay,
So if you see globally,
mm-hmm,
the audit data shows that most critical findings arise from documentation error and protocol deviations. So this layered approach minimizes the risk. So this three-layered approach, I think every hospital should follow. That would be very helpful to everybody.
mm, mm,
And so we moved away from a very generalist model to a very specialized role-based structure.
okay,
So when I say role-based structure,
mm-hmm,
I mean that there should be lead researchers
mm-hmm,
which can conceptualize the whole idea and oversight. There should be medical writers who can write protocols, consent form publications. There should be statisticians who can analyze the study. The CRCs should execute that job,
mm,
and the data team, I think, should well. If you have this structured system,
mm,
so this minor, I will say the image the more importantly will ensure continuous training and mentorship, which is critical in maintaining the quality. If we follow that, I think we'll be able to maintain the quality in clinical trials.
amazing. So this is how the high performing clinical research difference between a high performing clinical research to an average one defines, I guess, where there are systems, protocols, and enough documentation is encouraged along with proper training provided, right?
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
You are an NABH assessor also. You audit at least 40 to 50 hospitals across India. What are the most gaps you consistently observe in these hospitals, doctor, as an NABH assessor?
I will say that the first gap is a very weak or passive ethics committee oversight.
Uh-huh.
We just discussed how critical the ethics committee is
Hmm.
from any institution because it is the only body who protects the patient.
Hmm. Hmm.
All other stakeholders are relatively have a conflict of interest. and their own biases. This is the only body with the people from different walks of life who can actually protect the patient's safety, dignity. So if it is passive, it is a big problem. That is the gap number one. The second gap is the training of these ethics committee members.
Mm.
So many committees are composed of well, um, I think, but they may not be adequately trained. So that is the I will say the second problem.
Mm.
There are multiple layers of gaps. One major issue is the non-compliance to their own standard operating procedures.
Okay.
So in some hospitals, SOPs are not well defined. In others, SOP may exist, but they are not followed. And globally, if you see, non-compliance with SOPs is one of the most common audit finding.
Mm.
In
Mm.
fact, the international audit trend shows that the a large proportion of critical findings arise from deviation from the established procedures.
Okay.
And the third, I will say, is the lack of leadership vision. If the top management does not understand the clinical
Important.
research, the support infrastructure, invest in training, then the system becomes quite fragmented.
Mm. Mm.
And India's clinical trial ecosystem has faced scrutiny around, I'll say, in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So that actually led to significant regulatory reforms in India. There were a lot of changes.
Mm-hmm.
There was a case in the Supreme Court of India against the medical community and against the CDSCO office, the regulatory office of Government of India, Delhi,
Okay.
where the population felt that we are being used as a guinea pig in clinical trial.
Mm.
We are being mistreated.
Okay.
So that was the era in 2013. So some of the today's regulations, which are actually good, they come from that past,
Mm-hmm.
and I think entire ecosystem is now reshaped.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Like in 2013 and the scenario now, it's quite significantly different, I guess. I remember you saying that
Yeah,
you need to have proper government acceptance or a legal document from the government saying this experiment can be conducted and how many people and what kind of people can be used for to conduct this research.
yeah, very rightly said. Yes.
Like where do clinical trials typically break down, not often at the individual level but at a system level, where exactly do these clinical trials actually break down, doctor?
Yeah, I think that's the question is very important. If you say at the individual level, the lack of training, or we can say lack of professional maturity, or poor documentation practices.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, as you rightly mentioned, the breakdown happens at the system level.
Mm-hmm.
So clinical research involves multiple stakeholders,
Mm-hmm.
like doctors are called investigators
Mm-hmm.
in the clinical research ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
We already studied the second stakeholder is ethics committee. Then we have hospital leadership. Then we have something called as a CRO, contract research organizations,
Mm-hmm.
and the sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
And the last is a government body called regulators. So this is a system.
Mm-hmm.
Sponsors means the pharma company who manufactures the drug.
Mm-hmm.
The hospital is the facility where research happens.
Mm-hmm.
So there is an organization which bridges between the pharma company who manufactures and the hospital who researches. There is a company called contract research organizations. So these are like bodies who collaborate between hospitals and pharma companies. So there are the various stakeholders which we have.
Mm-hmm.
So globally, failures occur due to the, I will say, the misalignment between all these five stakeholders which I said. For example,
Mm-hmm.
if you see the ethics committees are passive,
Yeah.
oversight in or the entire oversight is weak. If the sponsors do not enforce quality, entire compliance can be dropped.
Mm-hmm.
If the regulators do not monitor, the accountability reduces like anything. So if it is a multi-node system and failure at any node affects the entire chain, I will say. That's how the system level failure happens.
Okay. Doctor, I remember you saying, like, in this conversation itself, you said it takes 15 years for a medicine or a drug to come into the society once it has started its birth. Now, in this 15 years, like as you mentioned, there are a lot of protocols to be followed and a lot of clinical trials to be done, not utilizing human beings as guinea pig and all that, right? Now, when does this, for example, 15 years is a long period. Like, for if I'm a scientist and I'm working on a drug, I have to, if I started at 45, then I have to wait till my 60th year for the drug to actually mature and come to the market. Now, in between, there are a lot of things that can change for me too, as a scientist who is coming up with a.
Yes.
How do people like yourselves in the system ensure that there is a consistency maintained all through, and how does this person who is conducting the research not feel let down because things are getting delayed?
Okay. So, as you rightly mentioned, it is a long period, 15 years.
Yeah.
Um, but there is no option here
Mm.
because, as we say, we may not, on the lighter side, we cannot say that, for a baby to be in the womb for 9 months is a very long period. Mama and Papa want to see the baby quickly after a month.
Yeah.
That's going to be challenging
Yeah.
because it will be little immature
Yeah.
and the baby will be born but died. So stillbirth, what we say.
Mm. Mm.
So I agree with you. This is a very long 15 years period, and even for the researchers, it could be quite discouraging.
Mm.
But unless and until we have sufficient data, it would be very risky to expose the population, the expose the public. If you have seen, there are a lot of mishaps in the past, which are very famous mishaps, where there was a drug which was taken by the pregnant ladies for their pregnancy issues
Okay.
and the morning sickness, the pain.
Mm. Mm.
So they took that medication,
Mm.
they feel better.
Mm.
But what happened was their babies of
Mm.
these pregnant ladies,
Mm.
uh, when they born,
Mm.
their organs were dysfunctional
Oh.
because that drug was not studied for a required duration. So that happened long back.
Mm.
Um, so if you see the impact which it has of any immature drug coming out is massive.
Mm.
So there is, I think, there's no other alternative but to do that. We can only fast track that process. That is possible. So
Yeah.
instead of 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
yes, we can bring that to 8 to 10 years is possible. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that requires a lot of system changes, and but still, it is required that proper trials are done, proper experimentation is done to ensure that these kind of mishaps don't happen. Understood.
Yeah.
So, if you consider India today,
Yeah.
how good are our standards in ethical clinical research in comparison to the global standards?
Yeah. I think the India, I must say that since I'm myself NA-based assessor and I also represent government of India to some extent to help them assist them in auditing various hospitals
Mm.
across the country. So I must honestly say that India has made a significant progress. So especially after the regulatory reforms,
Mm-hmm.
there is something called as New Drug Clinical Trial Guideline,
Mm.
which is released by the Modi government in
Okay.
2019.
Okay.
And we have a new system, very digital system called a Sugam portal
Mm-hmm.
that
Sugam.
has strengthened the entire SUGAM,
Mm.
technically called Sugam portal. That's the online portal
Uh-huh.
where the government has digitalized everything.
Okay.
So it's very transparent. The sponsor or people like me, the doctors also can write our projects, can submit to them. And on the system, on the platform, we're able to see the progress of our project,
Mm.
whether the government is approving, whether they have some clarifications required. So that way, I think the India is increasingly seen as a very preferred destination for clinical trials, and there are strong reasons for that.
Understood.
We discussed few of them, like large patient population, the high disease burden,
Mm.
skilled clinicians, the cost-effective systems in India. So these are the few reasons where everybody want to come to India.
Mm-hmm.
And in globally, there is a growing shift towards the diversifying trial populations is a shift nowadays, and we are moving very close to becoming globally at par. I will say in some areas like the regulatory digitalization and patient access, we are very competitive here.
Okay.
Yes, but we still need to strengthen the consistency in implementation, I will say, or the training areas at some level. If we address these, then the India has a potential to, I will say, not just the match, but lead in ethical clinical research globally.
Got it. Got it. You have worked across multiple international environments and you have researched, you have gone to those countries to study also, right, about what the clinical research practices they have. So, compared to India and compared to other countries, what differences stood up to you? Like when you were researching, of course, you have brought a lot of changes in Indian system also, but when you compared, what were the key differences that you observed, doctor?
I think, yeah, that's right. Important question.
Mm-hmm.
So when I traveled various countries and was mentored by various international mentors as well,
Mm.
that exposure gave me a very important realization, I will say.
Okay.
India does not lack capability, it lacks consistency and a system maturity.
Mm.
So if I compare India with global environments, which you asked me now today,
Yeah.
the I will say that the gap has significantly reduced,
Okay. Okay.
but the differences still exist in the professional conduct and standardization.
Okay.
So in many international settings, the clinical research is treated as like a very highly structured profession
Okay.
that defined competency frameworks, training is standardized. For example, if you take in the US and European unions, the mandatory GCP trainings, all those things are mandatory. Where in India, the biggest challenge is variation in the training quality. And I don't think this is because of lack of talent, but in fact, globally, Indian professionals among the largest contributors in clinical trial data management even today,
Okay.
even in fact in pharmacovigilance, biostatistics. However, within India, there are unregulated training providers.
Okay.
Some offer superficial or misleading programs, and students enter into those fields without the real world exposure. So the issue is definitely not capability, it is lack of structured, standardized
Mm.
grooming, I will say. That's the difference I can say in comparison to my international travel.
Nice. So, maybe considering all this, you have designed structured programs and personally are also contributing heavily to teaching people about clinical trials, right? So, how
Yeah.
critical, like, I understand how critical it is right now. So, when you started conducting these kind of training programs, what kind of gaps did you see, doctor, that you felt was important and you are trying to address them through your programs?
Yeah. So I think education is a key and it's very important. So this is one field where uh, error is not just a mistake.
Yeah.
It can actually impact the patient safety and, in fact, the scientific credibility.
Yes.
So, otherwise, if you see error in general terms, here we can't afford it because here somebody's life is at stake. So, if you look at global clinical ecosystem, it takes, as we said, 10 to 15 years to bring one drug to the market, and out of 100 molecules, only one will succeed. So, the entire system depends on precision, the I will say the scientific vigor, the ethical integrity, and all of this ultimately depends on people. So the quality of research is directly linked to the quality of training at the end.
Yeah.
So globally, a large proportion of protocol deviation, data inconsistency, audit finding is because of that only. So over the years, especially as a NABH assessor and through my work across institutions, I observed a very concerning pattern. Many students interested in clinical research, but they entered in the field without practical skills. And this is largely due to unstructured and sometimes unregulated training ecosystems in India. So to address this particular gap, I co-founded a clinical research excellence foundation. So the idea was very simple, but important though. create a structured, or I will say ethical and industry aligned training ecosystem for clinical research professionals.
Got
So what makes this foundation different from other platform? The biggest difference I will say the authenticity and the real world alignment. So we designed the entire training approach based on what hospitals expect and what CROs probably would expect and what regulators require, and not just something academic theory. And at this particular clinical research excellence foundation, the focus is on practical case-based learning. The students are trained on the real clinical trial protocol, the real patient scenario, the real documentation practice. For example, they learn how to do a informed consent through simulated doctor-patient interactions. They work on the adverse event documentation, side effect documentation. They understand serious adverse event, the regulatory reporting, compliance. So they are really essentially experiencing the trial environment before entering into that arena. So because globally, if you see, one of the biggest gap is education. The theory without application, that's where we need to have the hands-on assignment,
Okay.
the real-time discussions,
Okay.
and very importantly is the industry exposure. So that's another differentiating factor at Clinical Research Excellence Foundation. So through our collaborations with the various institutes across the country, the post sufficient training which we provide to our students and the certifications we provide, they actually get trained to do the clinical trials. They themselves conduct clinical trials as part of structured internship which we provide as part of the program itself.
Wow.
So students get exposure to clinical trial sites. They observe audits, monitoring visits. They interact with CROs, the contract research organizations, sponsors, government bodies. So
All
that changed
hands-on.
the entire confidence level of students.
Got it.
So the hands-on at your right descent. So and the beyond training, we also focus on the resume building, mock interviews, the professional network which they need. A lot of grooming is required. Continuous mentorship is required. The clinical research is not just about the knowledge. Also, it's about the readiness, the confidence, and I think professional behavior as well. So all that need to be groomed. And ours is not a commercial platform. It's developed by doctors, industry experts, so that we trained the required manpower to ensure that we have globally competent clinical research professionals. And also we are training institutions to become the good health,
Leading.
the research centers.
Okay.
I know I also told you that we have already published our work. So based on that, there are the various activities we are doing into the education.
Got it. So, so you have seen the changes that has happened in the last 2 decades in clinical research in scenario in
Uh,
India. Now, how do you look at what changes can come up in the next 5 to 10 years in India, globally, everywhere in the clinical research ecosystem? And how do you think
okay.
digitalization or AI can impact this? I'll just combine both because I want to understand.
Okay. Okay. So digitalization also, and
Yeah, how do
your
you
questions about digitalization?
both? What changes do you see? Like you have studied the last 2 decades of clinical research ecosystem.
Yeah.
How do you see the next? It is going to evolve, or what is going to happen in the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years, both globally and in India? And how will digitization actually impact these changes, Doctor?
So I think if we see there is a very bright future for all of us in India,
Okay.
and a lot of young doctors, professionals are taking up.
Okay.
And I foresee that since the Indian government is involved, there are a lot of passionate people like me, whatever to extent, little bit what we contribute. Eventually, as all of us are coming together, we really have. And as I also briefly explained you some time back, that the whole ecosystem of conduct of clinical trial in India is improving a lot. The global
Yes.
audience is appreciating that. So yes, there is a bright future, and I have seen that in our doctors nowadays. When I meet doctors to train them, I've seen there are a lot of important things. I see the scientific curiosity, the ethical responsibility, the discipline, and I will say the continuous learning which they want. So all those things are definitely evolving.
Okay.
Regarding your question about the
Yeah. Yeah.
artificial intelligence and the data systems, like that is something very new and something very important thing happening.
Okay.
So I will share with you a very impactful change I see.
Okay.
So I will say that there are three major transformations.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that the artificial intelligence, the first is the artificial intelligence in patient recruitment and trial design.
Okay. Okay.
So this is one of the very major shift which we see
Okay.
in terms of digitalization, in terms of artificial intelligence, which you asked. The patient recruitment, actually, which is a human activity.
Hmm.
So when we say patient recruitment, that means recruiting patient into a clinical trial
Hmm.
and the trial design. So that actually is a human activity.
Hmm.
But if you see globally, the biggest challenge in clinical trial has been a patient recruitment.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
70% of global clinical trial even today are facing the delay because of the patient
Patient
recruitment.
recruitment.
And I think 20 to 30% fail due to poor recruitment.
Hmm.
So we have something called as electronic health records. Those systems are coming.
Correct.
So there is the first thing I will say about digitalization.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I will say is about something called as a decentralized and hybrid clinical trials.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when I say decentralized, I think all of us have learned something from COVID-19.
Yeah.
So this clinical trial, the clinical trial world has also learned a lot from COVID-19, and
Uh-huh.
we started the online meetings and all.
Okay.
So now there's a concept called a decentralized hybrid trial. When we say hybrid,
Hmm.
that means some of the activities will happen in the hospital campus,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the activities will happen at the patient home.
Oh.
This is a
At the patient
revolution.
home. Okay.
At the patient home.
Wow.
So let's say that there are we need to do ECG, so you can have a portable machine. Go to the patient home.
Wow. Okay.
Let's say you want to do a blood collection.
Mm-hmm.
Why to call patient here? Go to patient
Yes.
home.
Yeah, that is happening now.
So
Yeah.
some activities in the hospital and some activities
At
at
home.
the patient. That is called hybrid technology.
Okay.
And the third, I will say that there's something called as a very important concept coming up. It's called real world data and something called as a big data analysis.
Yeah.
So now, traditionally, when you see the clinical trial operated in a very controlled environment, but now there is something called the real world data.
Mm.
So the registries, the insurance database, the digital health records,
Mm.
all that can learn, teach us a lot.
Mm.
So these are the three major things I will say into digitalization today in India.
Got it. Got it. Nice. So there is a bright future for all the doctors and clinical researchers. And of course, as doctor said, AI and data is going to support clinical research. And we have to see how the ecosystem is going to shape up in the future. Doctor,
Very true.
yeah, you're a very disciplined person in nature. In by I mean, it's your routine, right? Where you wake up
Yeah.
early in the mornings by 4:30 or up, conduct your meditation, then you have your personal training that you take up to ensure you're healthy, and then you have long work hours, and then you also categorize certain time for your family, and you have five different things that you are handling in your work life. So, how do you balance all this, and what keeps you grounded?
Yeah. So I think as you rightly mentioned, being a medical superintendent of the hospital is a huge task.
Mm.
It's a huge 350 bedded hospital, and I look after cardiology, oncology, urology, neurology, interventional neurology. Very, I will say, tense departments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's one activity. Another is, as you said, the heading the clinical research,
Mm.
then being chair of various scientific committees at very top hospitals of our country, like Max Super Specialty. I chair those committees.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, so I think, and then again traveling a lot for government to audit the hospitals.
And also heading
So
Bhaktivedanta Medical School.
yeah, so medical education I had where we have post graduation
Uh-huh.
in medical science. People come here to become postgraduate doctors and super specialty doctors as well.
Mm. Mm.
So I start generally at 4 a.m. and that's time is reserved for meditation, chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra we chant. There's a meditation we do.
Mm.
So and there's some meditation, and then that reflection followed by certain physical exercise for 90 minutes every day that's required to go on. So this is how my day starts. So what I think is that we need to invest in physical, mental, emotional balance before engaging with any external responsibilities. Otherwise, we'll not able to do the justice
Mm.
to the people who entrusted us with so many activities.
True.
And I think this structure helps me, maintain the energy, the clarity,
Mm.
the emotional stability. And you mentioned about how to remain grounded.
Mm.
So it helps me in decision making. That's how I go on.
Awesome. So, looking back, Doctor, what has your journey taught you, and what does success mean to you today?
The before success, I will say that balance in life, I think, is very important. And you are asking about what keeps me grounded and how do I follow such a rigorous schedule. 12 to 15 hours minimum is required to perform all these level of activities.
Yeah.
So I will say that the first is the spiritual anchoring. So no matter how the busy schedule is, that to be prioritized. Second is, I will say, continuous learning, and third, I will say, the structured time management.
True.
And as you were asking me, what are my reflections and what is the success? So when I look back, what gives me the best, most satisfaction is, I will say, not a single achievement, but the systems and the people that continue to create impact even beyond me. So one aspect I'm particularly proud of is contributing to the development of clinical research departments across multiple institutions in India.
Okay.
Because when we started, clinical research was not always seen as a structured or a strategic function, I will say.
Hmm.
But today, many institutions have dedicated research units.
Yeah.
They have systems in place. The second area I feel strongly about is the Clinical Research Excellence Foundation, which we co-founded.
Hmm.
Otherwise, people didn't have that opportunity to actually get the genuine learning from.
Hmm.
So I think this platform goes beyond just student training. What makes this platform unique is it is designed not just for one group but for the entire ecosystem.
Hmm.
So these are the few things I will say, and I think I will define success as um, it's not definitely not my success. Is always a teamwork, as you see that as I said that the organization also was co-founded with multiple people.
Yeah.
So success is only to see we have enough clinical research professionals,
Hmm.
and India as a whole is growing. If that is happening, then I think that is a success.
Amazing. That's wonderfully said, Doctor. India as a whole, as it grows, that means we are successful. That's very true.
Yeah.
So, Doctor, what do you advise the younger generation of doctors who are looking at clinical research as or want to contribute to clinical research? What should be their
I
mindset?
will say that,
Advise?
um, yeah, I think that what you are asking is very important that the young doctor, now I have already spent more than 2 decades, but the young doctors nowadays, everybody wants to earn quick money, get quickly settled. So well, that's not bad, but that's how the thought process is nowadays.
Yeah.
I would say first, expand the perspective.
Mm.
So medicine is not limited to the OPD or IPD procedures.
Mm.
There's a whole dimension of clinical research, the drug development,
Mm.
and the evidence generation.
Mm. Mm.
And that is where the doctors can contribute. So not just one patient,
Mm.
but thousands
Mm.
or even millions of patients globally.
Mm.
So I will advise that perspective. Second, I will say that consider becoming an investigator in a clinical research
Mm. Mm.
rather than just remaining a clinician where you can just treat one patient. I will advise that become investigator,
Mhm.
because as an investigator, the doctor will able to be a part of a developing future therapies.
Mm.
The doctor will develop contribution to scientific advancement,
Mm.
bring innovation to the patients. And if I say in a deeper way,
Mhm.
the doctor become an instrument in improving the human health at a very much large scale beyond in fact, his own thought process itself.
Agree.
Finally, I think I will say that commit to maybe learning ethics and discipline, because clinical research is a field where knowledge, responsibility, and integrity must go together. And if we could build that foundation, then I think there is no limit to the impact all doctors would be able to create.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Doctor. It was such a wonderful, insightful discussion. I think it's a privilege for me to talk to a person like yourself who has contributed to the ecosystem of clinical research. I my heartfelt gratitude to you, and also the kind of discipline you bring about into your everyday life. Thank you so much for all of the insights and all of the soulful words that you spoke. I really,
And
yeah,
yeah, and from my side also, thank you, Pushpa, for having me over here. And my congratulations to your platform. This is much needed platform where we are bringing the wealth of knowledge
yeah.
to the people around, and they could have access to this knowledge
Mm-hmm.
through the systems, through the platforms which you have created beautifully for not just citizens of India,
Yeah.
but anybody from any part of
Across.
the world would be able to access the knowledge which you are generating through these interviews. So thank you so much for that initiative for the entire country, and not just the country, globally.
Thank you so much.
And thank you again for having me over here.
Harish.